Today's conversation is on integrating electronic libraries. Some people refer to these as document management systems, but part of today's presentation is discuss the differences between um, document management systems and what we see in electronic libraries. So according to the Records Management Association, uh, just the cost of retrieving physical files is about $20. When you think of somebody getting up from their desk, walking over to the file cabinet, going through it, thumbing through it, and so forth, then now that might be expensive. I'm not quite sure. That seems like a little bit more than an hourly equivalent. But I think they're including the total cost of operating a manual file system, right? So we're looking at the rent, so to speak, of maintaining that file cabinet and all those manila folders and so forth that are in there. If you have a misplaced one, and sorry about the typo there, we'll correct that in the video. A misplaced physical file is cost $120 to find, just to go looking for it. And reconstructing an entirely missing file can be cost $240 to reconstruct or more. These are real costs, and these are according to the American Records Management Association. I don't think they're wrong. I think if we sat down and we looked at the reality of these expenses and the total cost to maintain a file system, find a missing file, or reconstruct one, we probably wouldn't believe the number we come up with, but that's the way it is. So some of the more popular document management systems that are out there include freebies or low-cost ones like Zoho and others. And I presented 4 of them around a source, Wondershare, that evaluates software. And the primary components here, of course, what systems they run on, whether or not they run in the cloud, whether or not they're supporting mobile apps. Do they have an optical character recognition feature, something to read the text? Does it enable syncing? I'm not quite sure syncing with what, but it could be syncing with your own SharePoint file system or your own ERP system or accounting system. For example, as we learned about integrating with QuickBooks last month, QuickBooks allows you to connect documents to customers and vendors by uploading them, and then they become attached to those records. The bear of truth on all of that was that all of those folders, all those files, are maintained in a series of folders in one big disk storage space on your local hard drive or on your server, or if your server's in the cloud, up in the cloud. Nonetheless, they're in one area and they require management. File encryption in some cases is there, in other cases it's not, so that the data cannot be read by the human eye, and it has to be converted by some sort of software tool. And then can the documents be managed collaboratively? In other words, can multiple people co-author and work with documents? And then finally, is there a way of defining the security and access of them along lines of users and groups? Nobody has a solution on all these points. Absolutely nobody. And so what we look for in this is the ideal. We would really like to have both web and native mobile. We have to be careful where we see desktop and web, and they say that they have mobile apps. Because those mobile apps may not be native. They may not actually be running actual programs written for Android or written for iOS. And so what does that mean? It means you're basically running those programs in a web browser and subject to all the manipulations of that web browser. And I don't know if you've tried to use programs that don't have a native app, but they shrink, they become untenable. You can't really natively click and touch the different keys on the screens. It really is very difficult. But in the ideal, they would be native. And then do they operate locally on my on-premise, on my network, on my computer, on my servers? Do they operate in the cloud, or can they operate in both environments, both on-premise and in the cloud, or hybrid is what that's called? It would be mobile app native. It would have an optical character recognizing feature to it, maybe even an image recognizing feature to it. So it could see things like this, right? If we look at the word capitalism there, that's written in the same font as Coca-Cola. And that is not a font that's easily readable by an optical character recognizer. It's in fact, it's nearly impossible. It could read enjoy, but it would not recognize capitalism. You actually need image processing software, not just text processing software to do that. And I use this as an example when I'm explaining some features of our software. Uh, Synchronization with everything, an open source solution so that we could integrate our document library with everything that's out there, including not just our accounting software, but our CRM. And then encryption, we'd like it to be secure. As you know, I'm a blockchain fanatic, and so decentralized solutions provide the greatest security. And I think in this day and age, people are more sensitive to the security issues of what they put up on the web and what companies are keeping and gathering about them and so forth. So we need to have file encryption. And then the ability to co-author. We should have the ability for multiple people who we trust to be able to access these files up in the cloud. And I call those people trusted providers or trusted partners, the people that actually own the document. I call those data owners as opposed to users. I'm really opposed to the term users these days because users only applies to the illicit drug industry, users of illicit drugs, and software users. And I really have been even written a paper that was recently published on the difference of that. I'd be very happy to share that with attendees here if you'd like a copy of it. And then finally, security, users and groups. But again, data owners versus those that have access to it. And that access by the other parties can be read or read and write. So in essence, this would be my ideal, and maybe a few more features to that. But if we look across this common plane of products that are out there, this is where the document management world is at. So according to Mortar Intelligence, the global document management market was valued at $5.5 billion last year. And it's expected to reach $11.5 billion by 2026. That's a growth of 13% annually over the next 5 years. Now, that to me is an amazing number because that's a percentage on top of a percentage on top of a percentage. And the last time I saw something growing at that kind of pace, it was CRM. And that was back in the early 2000 teens when it was projected by 2017 to become the number one selling segment in the software marketplace. Naturally, document management is critical today because everything seems to be documented, whether we get a receipt at a gas station or we have a business card from somebody or we have these wonderful photographs of memories, priceless memories of the bygone days, maybe the last century or so that our family has collected. In addition to that, we have the photographs, we have audio files, we have um, video files, all of these sorts of things that most document management systems don't even address. So that market for managing our digital assets is far greater than what these predictions are showing. This is just PDFs and Word documents for the most part. The sad story of this is that, according to Xerox, 46% of employees in small and mid-sized businesses today still waste time on inefficient paper-related workflows. All you need to do is walk around somebody's desk and see a bunch of these things, aka Post-it notes, all around their screen frames, on their on their desks, on their keyboards, and you've got a paper-driven individual. Now, there's only two reasons why they're doing that. One, the company doesn't have a good electronic document management system and provide good streamlined workflows. Or they're just not change oriented and they believe that they either for one reason or another don't want to rely on that system or a system, and they just prefer to do it this way because this is the way they've always done it. Inefficiency in small businesses cannot be tolerated. And the only reason why I don't apply that to large scale enterprises is because it's built into the cost of operations. You talk to any large business enterprise manager, and they'll tell you, we just assume there's a certain percentage of overhead allotted for inefficiency and waste. And so I'm not quite sure that the pandemic is going to change that paradigm at all, but it may be forced upon a lot of companies, regardless of size, as workers reevaluate their positions in the workplace, the environments in which they're working, and their willingness to adapt to change. So with that, I want to explain the difference between a document management system and an electronic library of documents. A document management system, and some of you may have experience with this, right? In its simplest case, taking a document and storing it on Google Drive or OneDrive or Box or Dropbox is technically qualifying as a document management tool. It usually requires a proprietary piece of equipment or software. In this case, you'd be relying upon the management tools built into those services. It could be that it's tied to a copier that you have. And so Xerox or Ricoh or Samsung or whoever you're using for your copier, Hewlett Packard, they provide you with a scanning tool, and you have to use that tool. And if you don't, you really can't utilize that device. I have one right here behind me, which is from a company called NeatDesk, and they have proprietary software that goes along with it. And in fact, for all intents and purposes, a couple of years ago, got out of the hardware business and just went software. But again, accessing their file cabinet required their proprietary software. So these are closed systems for the most part, and if they're open systems, they're not robust enough to not rely on you, which brings me to the next step, which is structured naming conventions. They assume that you're going to be naming these things a particular way in order to locate and find them. And they might be file folders, they might be names that you come up with that are common, just like you would do with your local hard drive as you've been storing files from the days of your first PC in the late 1980s. And so those structured naming conventions with defined storage files becomes a limiting, storage folders becomes a limiting factor. Also, as I've already mentioned, in most cases, like that one PDF element, they limit the formats to text only, PDFs, Word files, Google Docs, whatever. They could extend to spreadsheets. They could extend to programs like I'm using here, basically PowerPoint. But the body of the document itself has to be human readable to the machine to make any sense of it. And while you can store an image up there or a video clip or an audio clip, it doesn't really analyze it to make it accessible. So you'd have to remember the name of it. You'd have to remember the folder it's in. And so these systems also require, and I'm saying require universally, a data gatherer role, somebody, a human being that really manages this. You have to drag and drop the stuff up, and then you have to put it in the right folder. And then if you're going to access it, you have to actually know where to get it. You can't just put in a search and not remember the name of the folder. If you put in, Acme and you put in XYZ, it's not going to come up. You're not going to find it when in fact XYZ may be part of the document itself. But it just requires a little bit too much on your part to manage it. On the other hand, an electronic library is open sourced, which basically means it's easily accessed by third parties and usable on any platform. It supports not just many file platforms, like by that I mean Windows, Linux, Mac OS, Android, iOS, but it also supports the file formats beyond just text. It does handle managing images and audio and video files. An electronic library, as a library has in real life a librarian. In the case of a document management system, you are the librarian. In the case of an electronic library itself, it's autonomous. It has the software built in to curate all of the assets. It will analyze these and create a complete set of indexes and tie those to a search engine, and then organize those appropriately as it deems fit. So it's a much more looser convention. It's a lot more flexible and adaptable environment. And I'm going to use the term simultaneously here as we go forward. Are there any questions up to this point or any observations anybody like to make?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, no problem.
Is this viewable? Are there visual? Asked to enable my camera. I'm not sure my camera is working here for me.
That's okay. Yeah,
today.
It's up at the top. Looks like the camera. Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Is this viewable with a visual directory like a Windows file folder would be, or do we have?
Yes.
Okay.
So those tools, if that's what you're used to, those interfaces are available and often just standard part of the software. But the interface from the user side is not what we're really addressing as much as the service provided on the back side.
Right.
Because that's where the intelligence is. But you can have any kind of front end on it, Bill, and you'll see some of them here as we get into the additional slides. Good question. So integrating document management, as I've suggested earlier, is productive, as is integrating pretty much anything in your organization, because if you don't integrate, you have either islands of automation or you have bridges that can get out of whack. As two software packages cease talking to one another due to upgrades and normal wear and tear. And these have been proven, integration itself has been proven to be cost saving. And if it saves money, it adds to the bottom line profits. So there's nothing different than what I've said in previous sessions here, other than we're applying it now to the electronic library, and our originating system is our CRM tied into our accounting. We add electronic library to this, and the ultimate result is efficiency. In making people first, money will naturally follow. A lot of systems fail. They fail to be properly or completely implemented because the people and their needs are not considered until after the fact, when a decision has already been made to go with a particular tool based strictly on cost. And usually those cost analyses are not complete. In fact, when we look at the return on investment, we actually look at the rate of return over a period of time. And as I said in previous episodes, by using integration to eliminate repeated or physical tasks with integrated and streamlined workflows, every dollar that I save in labor that I no longer have to do, every $20 that I don't have to spend in managing and retrieving a file, every $120 that I don't have to go looking for a misplaced one, every $240 or more dollars I have to spend to construct one, drops to the bottom line. So companies that just routinely access and maintain files is spending that $20 over and over and over and over again, when in fact they can reduce the cost of doing that to maybe 5%, maybe $1. Well, what does that do? Ultimately, that takes a repeatable cost, reduces that repeatable cost on a regular basis, which then increases my repeatable profit. Very fundamental. It's not like a one-time savings. It's not like I buy this software and I'm going to spend $70 on it every month, and it's not going to save me a lot more than that in the long run. It will. So let me give you an example. As we remember last month, talking about CRM integrations with accounting, we have basic capabilities of CRM, which include activity logs, addresses, but I also pointed to documents. And I'm highlighting that today. And what we have here is our little Alfred E. Neumann sample, and we did a proposal for Alfred E. Neumann. And that proposal actually exists down here in our system. If I want to, I can actually hover over this. Now, this is a screenshot, so you're not going to see it interactive. But if I hovered over it, I can actually see. In fact, you know what? I'm going to go live. I'm just gonna wing it. Let's see what I got here. If that's okay with you, I'm going to change what screen I'm sharing. And I'm going to go live. Okay. So I can go into my Newman record. I may not have all my documents here. Let me see, because I'm in a different instance. Okay, yeah, it should be okay. Yep. So I'm actually interacting with the system right now. And I go into the vault. And I go into my other category. And up pops interactively my proposal. If I want to actually see it, I can click on it, download it. Whoops. What happened there? Let's try this. Love it when demos don't quite work. All right. Go into a different instance here. Again, I can quickly find Alfred and his contact in my CRM. There he is. Back into his record. This one's better because you can see I've actually got a picture of Alfred. I'm enlarging it so it's easier for you to see. Bring up my document, right? Click on it. There's my preview. That didn't cost me $20. That's my point. Very easy to find, download. And one other thing that my next slide actually talks about, I can see the librarian activity on this. I can click here and not only see the when I uploaded the document down here, and I did so originally back on May 19th, but when I accessed it, when it was indexed by my system, and I'll show you why that's important in a moment. And then these are all pretty much demos that I've done since then, including the one I just did at 12:26. Just like in a library, you see that library card. So I can see who has touched the document. And if I want to go search for this in my library, I can go over here to my vault where these documents were stored, and I can type in Acme because I know he's with the Acme company, and up came at the very beginning that proposal. Now the word Acme is used in these documents as well. So if all I wanted was Alfred E. Newman's Acme, I could add my search criteria and say, just give me where that occurs, these words occur, and I get the one document. Now notice I put in Newman, who's actually part of the title, but it's also in the document. Acme is not in the title. Acme is not in the title. Where did it come up with that? It indexed the document. And look, it's a graphic. I hope this demonstrates the key points I was just making about the fact that this is more than OCR. A system that really manages an electronic library does the curation of the information, both in the title and in the contents, and doesn't just do it on the basis of the text that's blocked, but also graphical information. And since I've accessed that again, I can go back to my tracking log and you can see I've now accessed that at 12:28. That's pretty exciting stuff. So you can imagine doing a search and being able to put in the word Citco and 2020 and see all of your 12 invoices or bills from last year. Again, the log, the preview, and good electronic libraries, unlike document management systems, are vendor neutral. In other words, they can work with your proprietary CRM or your whatever your tools are there, OneDrive, Dropbox, Box, Google Drive, iCloud, or something that I'm going to spend a little time on now talking about, which is decentralized storage. Decentralized storage takes your asset, breaks it up into dozens and dozens of pieces, and scatters it across the internet so that it cannot be retrieved in one place. In other words, a good electronic library using decentralized cloud storage, and there's nothing else out there that does this but our software. But I want to talk about it because I really believe this is where the industry is headed. And I believe it brings a level of security to companies in a day and age when companies are looking for security solutions. Because firewalls and virus checkers and other kinds of hackers and thieves are just having a payday and a heyday at companies' expenses because they keep doing things the old-fashioned way. So how does this work? It literally breaks the program up. In this case, I have a user and I have 3 buckets or 3 folders on which I have granted access to 4 other users. Now, I'm not going to explain this software. I'm simply going to say this is what an interface looks like, and typically you'd see how much data you have stored and what kind of bandwidth you're using to transfer, because this is all about storing in the cloud. And cloud storage is cheap. Cloud storage can be $10, $20 a month for a terabyte, 1,000 gigabytes of space. Very cheap. What it does is it takes a file like our proposal for Alfred E. Newman and puts it up on this decentralized cloud. And this little picture down here shows us, in this particular case, that the proposal was broken into 80 pieces and they were scattered on nodes across the internet in 80 different locations. Each location is separately encrypted, and each location points to the other locations, making it virtually impossible, like a 1 in 15 trillion times 80, which is a huge number, for a hacker to be able to find this, even one component of this, and decrypt it and reassemble it. But you have a way of doing it, because in our case, we have the ability to share. We can share this document. We can download this document. We can preview this document. And yet hackers are incapable of seeing it. In fact, the pieces are distributed across the global network and then recompiled to securely, in a secure manner, to download them so you have access to this. Why is this important? Data breaches in 2019 cost per record $138 from the entertainment industry, $142 in education. The biggest bang for the buck are people's healthcare records, which cost about $429 to a business to recover, for a total market cost, and this is just conservatively estimated, of $1.7 billion in 2019. Doesn't sound like a lot, but those are cost, out of pocket costs. That doesn't include the price that the hackers charged in order to sell that information on the dark web. As I think I said in previous presentations, a healthcare information system database on the dark web, sight unseen, even encrypted and intact as one file system, will garner at least $500,000 for that hacker. It's too profitable for them to stop doing. So in essence, again, I'm trying to give you a broad overview of this information. I'm not trying to sell a product, but I do want to tell you where my vision is and how I've incorporated that in our product. And that is this way. Not only have we examined this over my lifetime in the IT area of about 40 years, but even in how we've built our software, we have built it around multi-platform flexibility, local cloud hybrid, and decentralized blockchain storage, which again, nobody has. That the applications are native, that they're not just web applications that give you access to these files. Very easy to use, including, as I'll say down here in a minute, giving access to people who request access. The OCR feature, as I've already shown you, not only indexes and curates, but it also builds it around graphical images, not just text. The electronic library is in the cloud and available all the time, so there's nothing to sync with. It's always there and it's searchable and linkable to any of your clients like we did with Alfred E. Newman. The fact that it's on blockchain makes it virtually impenetrable, and I mean practically impenetrable, to current hacking techniques. You would have to have a super quantum computer and the ability to trial and error uh, trillions of passwords in order to find just one block and decrypt that. And that wouldn't give you enough to reconstruct the whole file. The co-author in real time, that collaboration is all owner controlled. So as the person that owns this document or the company that owns this document managed by one of your people, the access to it and the people with whom they share it is all controlled by the owner, the author. And you can have multiple people contribute to that. And the way you do that is by having the owners and these trusted providers who you grant write access to or read access to. If they have write access, they implicitly have read access. If they have just read access, they cannot write to the file. If that sounds complicated, it really isn't, because those are the only security provisions you need to have. Or am I going to allow um, my spouse to read and write the files in my accounting area on my family organizer, or shall I give my kids read access to their academic transcripts, that sort of thing, so they can't overwrite them. Those simple everyday decisions we take for granted are all done in the system automatically behind the scenes without any more human intervention. So if that makes sense, um, we can review these, but you can play the video back when we launch it this afternoon on our YouTube channel. So in a sense here, in terms of the conversation points, integration is productive by eliminating bridges and eliminating islands of automation and streamlining your processes. It's proven, because these document management systems are evolving and they need to continue to evolve. And they've been discovered by many companies. One of my clients has they're going to hit 100,000 documents in their system, and they've been using it now for about 2.5 years. They use nothing else in our CRM. They don't even use the contacts. They just use the documents, and they're paying the regular price for the whole software. But maybe one day they'll incorporate and do the CRM. But they have 96-97% of the world market on their product. So it's not like they need competitive information, because they don't have too many competitors. And of course, it's profitable, because everything I've shown you, you can do very quickly, automatically. I don't have to physically get up from my desk and go look in a file cabinet. I just have to point and click or search and have those documents delivered to me at my fingertips. In other words, these techniques are extendable to every business that maintains any kind of record. And again, those records are regular text records, PDFs, images, audio files, or videos. Any questions? Oh, good. Jamie's already got one, which is terrific. How would you compare the integrated search as seen in the demo with Microsoft's Document Manager? Okay, so they do not index the contents of all their documents. So if I had an image that was uploaded by a camera with the geolocation information and the metadata, they'd never be able to find it. They'd only be able to find the image if you named it something and you searched on that name. And that's true even in their SharePoint system. They're heavily dependent on matching on naming conventions and not indexing the contents of the files. If you look at File Manager or Windows Explorer on your Windows environment, or even in Outlook, it takes a long time to find files through their indexer, and performance-wise, it's another part of the Microsoft bloatware that slows the system down. So many people disable it. I can show you exactly what happens on something like that. I can go in my downloads document, and what it's doing right now is I've got this little circle going because the system is going out and re-indexing the drive. And it's not even re-indexing the contents, it's just re-indexing the file names and the folder names. I'll get the result, but for 4,500 files, if you recall that example I gave you, it was looking at 2,500 files, and it brought it up, and you couldn't even say one Mississippi. It was less than a second. That's the difference. You're very welcome. Anybody else? Overwhelmed and awestruck.
Awestruck.
Okay. This is exciting stuff. Paper, I shouldn't say this, but paper is never really going to go away because people do like to have paper. We do markups on paper. We do things like that. Everybody thought with PCs and book readers, we wouldn't see published books anymore. I disagree with all of that. I think it's going to be a component of printing that's out there. It doesn't, for example, this book doesn't require me to have an internet connection, and I can just hand this to somebody and I'm done. Those sorts of things are not going to go away. So there's always going to be a place for that. But what is extendable, even in the big market, people just don't have the autonomous, intelligent, smart software running in the background. And yet, when you look at your paper trail of your life, from your birth certificate to your death certificate and everything in between, you really do need to store your information on the cloud in a decentralized, secure environment so that you have ready access for it at your fingertips. If your granddad or grandmom are coding on your bathroom floor and the ambulance shows up and you can't get your finger on their do not resuscitate order, the paramedics have no choice but to resuscitate them. Again, I can give you life and death practical situations where having your documents and your audio files and your video files and the pictures from your life available in the cloud, out of reach of failed computer systems. And nobody's asked that. How many of those nodes are necessary to reconstruct a document? Only about 30. So even though I'm storing that particular proposal up there in 80 different pieces, if 50 of those nodes went away because the internet in those parts of those countries went down around the world, all I need is 30 to reconstruct it. Everything else is for fault tolerance and resilience. So when people say, I'm going to lose something, no, you're more likely to lose files on your thumb drive, files on your hard drive, or even if you're using those large, big tech service bureau companies like the ones we mentioned earlier, they are analyzing your data. They are mining that data. If you look at the licensing, and they are providing that information and selling your interest in your profiles to other people, other organizations. So our solution is privacy centric. Again, I'm not trying to push our solution. I'm just saying that the decentralized storage area in the cloud belongs to you, the data owner, not to the service bureau, whether it's Google or Microsoft or Exacta Corporation. It's yours. It's your data store. All we do is give you the interface, and I think this is what most software companies should do. The only reason why they don't is that they don't want to have to charge the end user a fee. But frankly, there's a cost to privacy, and I think it's relatively small. And I haven't even addressed the ransomware preventative nature of a solution like this, which is, burning on a lot of companies' minds these days. So with that, I'd like to, again, invite any final questions. And if there are none, I'll simply say thank you for your time and joining the conversation today. I'm Dennis Hill, president of Exacta. Thank you.